Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman gets national attention for establishing a task force to fight the Heritage Foundation's controversial Project 2025. Also, as Humboldt County continues to struggle with a massive backlog of deferred road maintenance, local environmental groups say they will oppose new taxes to fund that gap unless significant portions of the resulting revenue go to public transportation. We'll chat with one of their representatives, Colin Fisk, coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Just when you think the long-running battle for supremacy between the left and right in this country couldn't get any worse, any more harrowing, someone takes a shot at former President Donald Trump. I am no fan of Donald Trump, as regular viewers of this show are well aware. But I'm thankful the shooter only grazed his target and Trump's life was spared. First off, political violence is wrong, and the answers to our social problems will never be found through a rifle scope or at the end of a flagpole spear like those seen on January 6th. Secondly, his death at the hands of an assassin would have only made our dismal state of division all the worse, as rabid partisans pointed fingers and fans of Trump turned him into a martyr for intolerance and vitriol. Even in the failed attempt, some of this has gone on, and it's surreal to see folks continue to stoke such divisions in the face of horrific violence. The only way to defeat Trump and the radical brand of politics he espouses is at the ballot box. We need to vote ourselves back into rational discourse and civil debate. Unfortunately, so many of our fellow Americans consider the choice this year and lead toward not voting at all. Trump has proven himself toxic, as the past 8 years have demonstrated. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's age, apparent cognitive decline, and stance on issues like the war in Gaza have made him unpopular with many. While neither of these candidates are particularly inspiring, only one has repeatedly demonstrated that they are a threat to democracy and the rule of law. It's easy to say that in the face of such mediocrity, the choice doesn't matter. But if you're a person of color or transgender or homeless, or if you suffer under any number of disadvantages that render you in need of government services or support, you truly can't afford the risk. And while Biden may decide to remain a one-term president, his likely replacement, Vice President Kamala Harris, has issues of her own with the Democratic base. And with the recent Supreme Court decision to broaden presidential immunity now in effect, the next president will have an unprecedented opportunity to get away with a laundry list of crimes and misdemeanors. Sitting this one out and sticking your fingers in your ears would likely just further wound the most challenged among us. What good would your indignant refusal to vote do then? And now, the news. The only meat processing company on the North Coast has just closed, and local ranchers are worried about how they're going to get their meat to market. According to the Lost Coast Outpost, Redwood Meat Company's closure means that Humboldt County is losing its only USDA-certified slaughterhouse. Since the 1950s, the company has processed beef, hogs, lambs, and goats for local ranchers. Ryan Nylander, the company's operator, said that unless an outside investment comes through soon, the company will stay closed permanently. Such an investment is considered a long shot. Nylander told the Lost Coast Outpost that the rising cost of insurance, power, and water made running the business untenable. Local ranchers, meanwhile, say the loss of Redwood Meat Company will impact their own bottom line and put their businesses at risk. Liz and Hugo Klopper from Bear River Valley Beef said that Redwood Meat Company slaughtered and processed all of the beef they've produced for the past 20 years. Quote, "I have no easy answer," Liz Klopper said. "Redwood meat is what we call critical infrastructure for local beef, and it's gone." North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman is receiving national attention these days for his efforts to fight Project 2025, a conservative agenda for America put forward by the Heritage Foundation. Huffman founded the Stop Project 2025 task force, made up of himself and 15 colleagues from the House of Representatives. Huffman says Project 2025 will transform our government by dramatically increasing executive power, eliminating checks and balances, stripping away individual freedoms, and effectively ending democracy as we know it. During a recent appearance on MSNBC, Huffman made the case that this plan will dramatically impact people's lives and needs to be stopped.
You recently announced the creation of the Stop Project 2025 task force. What is it that you intend to do to actually stop this project?
Well, Charles, thank you for having me, and thank you for you and your network talking about Project 2025. Honestly, the most important thing that any of us can do is to take this dystopic agenda out of the shadows of this right-wing fever swamp and just make it known to the American people how extreme it is and how seriously it should be taken. So congressional Democrats are stepping up with this task force to do our part in that regard.
So we're talking about a 1,000-page sort of outline sketch for the future of American democracy. I know this may be a tall task, but what is it in that document that concerns you the most around this becoming a reality?
That's a tougher question than perhaps it sounds like it should be, because every part of Project 2025 is a wrecking ball towards our government, our democratic institutions, our fundamental rights. I think the piece that disturbs me the most is the explicit extremism embraced in this war plan for the MAGA right-wing Republicans, and the fact that there are no longer any constraints. They are just blasting through norms, and it's not even clear that they will be bound by the rule of law as they roll this agenda forward. So we could talk about the sweeping of the away of the civil service, the repopulating the federal workforce with these vetted Trump loyalists that are going to be from a database maintained by the Heritage Foundation. We could talk about eliminating the Department of Education, rolling the military into blue cities. So many aspects of this are just extreme and dystopic, but it's the explicitness of the extremism and the fact that it's coming from the highest echelon of Donald Trump's inner circle that troubles me the most.
We'll be right back after this short break.
I'm David Gordon, Executive Director of Keat TV. And I want to tell you about the free PBS app. And it's not like free for 30 days or a 3-month trial. It's free for as long as you'd like to use it. Watch episodes of PBS shows that have premiered on TV recently, as well as Keat's live broadcast, right in the app, no antenna required. Shows like Frontline, PBS NewsHour, and Washington Week are always free, but you can get even more out of the PBS app by becoming a sustaining member of Keat. $5, $10, $20 a month. Any of those options will qualify you for our most popular member benefit, PBS Passport. Drama, science, nature, there's so much to watch with Passport. But what really matters is your donation now supports the PBS programs that you watch. Thank you.
I'm joined now by Colin Fisk from the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, who is part of a coalition of local environmental groups who are advocating for more money to get spent on public transportation. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So a few months now, I mean, I've been doing this job for a little while, so sometimes the times bleed together, but we had the Public Works Director for Humboldt County in to talk about deferred road maintenance. And at the time, he said it's something on the order of $500 million of road problems that are not being addressed because the county doesn't have the money. And one of the things that he mentioned at the time is that there might be a tax that gets proposed in order to fund that. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking before the show, and you pointed out that on Tuesday the board is going to be considering that and may have some language to consider. So if people want to get involved in that conversation, go to Tuesday's board meeting. Yep. But you guys published an op-ed. There's a collection of folks from local environmental groups and basically said that we know that there's unmet or unfixed roads, and that's a problem, but we also need to spend money on improving mass transit in Humboldt County.
Yep.
Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yep.
So let's start with, what is the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, and how did that come to be?
So we're a local nonprofit organization based in Humboldt, and we were founded in 2015, and we focus on encouraging better infrastructure and policies to support walking, biking, rolling, public transportation throughout Humboldt and around the North Coast. And we really were founded out of the environmental movement, folks who had been fighting with Caltrans over projects like the Richardson Grove project, and really saw the need for an environmental organization focused on transportation and the various ways to make it more environmentally friendly than the status quo.
Yeah, and as we're obviously going through this, ongoing struggle with climate change, transportation plays a big role in how we get to this place that we're at. It's so problematic. Can you sort of help demonstrate or talk about the connection between transportation and what's been happening with the climate in the world?
Yeah. So nationally, the transportation sector is the largest source of climate pollution now for the United States. Same is true for California, and here locally it's even larger. I think the most recent estimate is that it's over 70% of our local emissions come from the transportation sector, and so that's a lot of different things, but the biggest chunk of it is personal vehicles. And so one of the major things that we have to do to address the climate crisis is to reduce transportation emissions. And of course, I think a lot of people are familiar with the idea of electric cars and those kinds of solutions, which absolutely are necessary. But if you look at the state's plans and models, and really any of the reputable models for how to reduce emissions, they also show not only do we have to electrify transportation, but we also have to drive less. Yeah. And so we need to establish better methods for getting around by public transit, by walking, by biking, et cetera.
Yeah. Now, so you guys say that you would like some portion of this to be spent on mass transit. It's interesting. Do you guys have any kind of sense for what formula you would like to see deployed, percentage-wise, or how do you guys break that down? What would be a worthwhile or a sufficient expenditure by the county?
Yeah, so we don't have a specific percentage or dollar figure, and the reason is that this will be a general tax, and so as such, the county is actually not allowed to say what percent will go to what.
Oh, wow.
And legally, they could spend it on anything. But as we see with, for example, Measure Z, which folks might be familiar with, that's another example of a general tax, but what they do is they sort of make a promise to the voters that even though they could spend it on anything, they will spend it on certain things, and they establish some accountability mechanisms like an oversight committee.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is not a specific amount, but that there's a promise that there will be a substantial chunk going to public transit, and that there's some sort of mechanism to ensure that that happens.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, I live in Cutton and I have a teenage son and daughter, and they like to take the bus sometimes when I'm not around to give them a ride or whatever. And the service out there is spotty. On the weekends, it's non-existent. For folks living in Willow Creek and in southern Humboldt, there's like sometimes a couple times a day, I think, is what they're limited to. Yeah. But ridership is also a problem. Like, I remember talking to folks at HTA when they had a Willow Creek, this was years ago, had a Willow Creek service that would come in, and they said they just couldn't get the riders for it. And they wanted it to be self-supporting, and that was always a problem.
Right.
How do you, address that side of the argument? If a route won't produce enough revenue to make it worthwhile, how does the county rationalize continuing to support it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that. And actually, Willow Creek is an interesting example because that route does still run today, and it's primarily ridden by high school students coming into Arcata to go to high school. Yeah. So, there is a demand for transit. Of course, there's less demand in communities that have lower populations or lower density of population, and there's more demand in the higher density areas like Arcata, Eureka, McKinleyville. Yeah. But I think there's an argument to be made that we need to provide at least some level of transit service sort of as broadly as possible, because there are lots of folks who don't or can't drive. Yeah. And that includes kids, like you're saying, but it also includes lots of adults. It includes lots of seniors and folks with disabilities and folks who just can't afford to own or to maintain or to buy fuel for a car. So in Humboldt County, I think there's often an assumption that everybody drives. But according to our estimates, at least 15,000 adults in the county don't even have a driver's license.
Yeah.
And so,
wow.
We need to provide some sort of service so that folks can get to where they need to go.
Yeah.
And I think beyond that, we need to provide as high a level of service as the ridership will allow. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of a chicken and egg scenario. And so people won't ride transit generally if they have a choice, if it doesn't provide a high quality of service. Yeah. And so to address the issues like the climate pollution that we were talking about, you need to really provide more frequent service and have it on the weekends and have it late at night and all that sort of thing in the areas where most people live, which is this kind of Humboldt Bay greater region. Yeah,
it's sort of counterintuitive in a way. Like, if by investing you draw the customers rather than only investing when there's a demonstrated demand and ready customer base, right?
Right. And actually there's sort of a rule of thumb in transit that if you start a new route, you don't really judge its success for at least a couple of years because it takes a while for people to get used to the new service.
Yeah. In the op-ed you guys talk about there being, you'd like to see it to where there's, we need buses every 15 minutes at all stops between McKinneyville and Fortuna. That would be ideal for folks who need buses.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how much that might increase operating costs for HTA, or does that enter into the formula for you guys?
Yeah, so we don't have a specific number, but it'd probably be a couple $1 million a year to provide that kind of service.
Yeah.
And we didn't sort of pull that number out of nowhere, the 15-minute number. That's supported by research that indicates that you really need service at least that frequent for folks who have a choice to choose to ride, because it's really the kind of level where you don't have to plan your trip so much. You can kind of show up at a bus stop and just know that pretty soon a bus will come.
Yeah. I know that over the years they've had hearings up in various rural parts of the county to sort of collect people's unmet transportation needs. And some of those meetings were well attended. Do you have any sense of what the outcome of those were, or any way to quantify for your own selves what people are saying in the rural areas about their transportation needs? Are they complaining more about roads being in bad quality, or the fact that they need transportation into the county seat or whatever?
Yeah, so I think that would probably depend on who you asked, but the unmet transit needs process is actually an annual thing that's legally required for the county or the Humboldt County Association of Governments to do.
Yeah, and they're the bureaucracy in charge of helping to divide up and spend the state's transportation dollars, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And so they do this process as part of the transit funding that comes from the state. And I guess the one thing that I would say is that every year people bring forward from across the county needs, transit needs that are not being met, and most of them end up being rejected, not because they're not real needs, but because there isn't the funding to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely a need to expand service just to provide better service for the folks who already rely on transit, but also the county and all the cities through the Association of Governments have adopted a regional transportation plan that actually calls for significantly increasing transit ridership, partly because of the climate issue.
Yeah.
So it calls for doubling ridership by 2025, which is just next year, and then doubling it again by 2030 and again by 2040. So that kind of thing really requires that investment in more frequency and a broader span of service like we were talking about.
Yeah. Another thing, I'm talking to you, so I'm like, well, what they also need is, more and increased service from Southern Humboldt and Eastern Humboldt, and I'm sure that that's something that they're considering. But for the folks out there, it can be a really limiting factor for jobs, and like you mentioned, for kids trying to go to high school, they need whatever options they can get to come home later if they want to attend school events or whatever else. And
there's some interesting innovations here. So part of the challenge with lower density areas like that is that folks really want to, folks who rely on the bus, they really want that frequent service, but there's not enough of a population to have enough riders for frequent service generally.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you can do that's sort of a recent innovation is what's called microtransit or on-demand transit, where you have a smaller vehicle that can sort of have a service area that can pick folks up and bring them into those fixed routes. And so sort of provides probably better service than the 2 or 3 times a day that you might otherwise get with just a regular bus, and doesn't require you to run this regular service with only 1 or 2 people on the bus all the time.
Yeah.
So that's something that definitely we've been looking at, and the Humboldt Transit Authority has been looking at.
Now, some people might say that, yes, we need more mass transit options and better service and all of those things, but we also need some of the more egregiously unrepaired roads to get fixed.
Sure.
And whatever money we can raise for fixing the roads, if we can raise it, it needs to get spent that way. How do you respond to that, sort of lining up of priorities, or basically saying there might be other ways to fund mass transit, but this is important now for us to worry about the roads?
I guess I would say there aren't that many other ways to fund mass transit.
Okay.
And so, for example, right now, there's almost no local taxpayer money that goes to support public transportation. The budget is pretty much all state and federal money, and I think about 40% of it is grants. So, when you think
is limited in time, it's usually a one-time shot.
Exactly.
And then when it's gone, it's gone.
You have to apply every year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the sort of insecurity of that and the fact that, the state has this big budget deficit right now, and there might be a change of federal administration that might not be so transit friendly. Yeah. And so, there's a big need in my mind to have a reliable local source of funding so that if something were to happen at the state or federal level, which is not unlikely, I think, that we could at least backstop that and keep from losing service.
Yeah. Now, you guys say that if it doesn't have this expenditure for mass transit, you're going to oppose it. What would that opposition look like? Can you speak to that? I mean...
Yeah, so that would depend on which of the organizations you're talking about. So an organization like mine, we're a nonprofit, and so that means that there's a limited amount of time and energy that we can spend on ballot measure issues. Yeah. So we would, officially oppose it if it didn't, meet these standards. But we probably wouldn't be spending a lot of time out there campaigning. But some of these other organizations are not 501c3s, not to get too technical, but they are allowed to spend, more of their time and money on ballot measures, and they probably would.
Yeah, they have more options for how they would react, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Now, have you guys approached the County Public Works Department, and what's their attitude been like? Are they reciprocal, welcoming to your input? How do they...
Yeah, we've been working with the county for a while now, expressing these concerns and trying to make sure that there's, that the measure addresses the concerns that we have and includes transit in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. The language that the Board of Supervisors will vote on to put on the ballot has not been finalized yet, so we don't know what it will look like. But they're doing all their polling and trying to figure out what's the right messaging that will appeal to the most voters. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to communicate is that voters who might be more likely to support a tax like this also perhaps might be concerned about the climate, might be concerned about transit, might be concerned about equity and the impacts of the tax on equity. Yeah. And so we think that this would be a good sell to those voters. Yeah.
You mentioned equity, and I meant to ask you about that. But you guys point out, again, in the op-ed, which I encourage people to read, we'll have a link in the description so people can check it out, but that the sales tax isn't spread equally across the board, or doesn't have an equal impact across the board, that often the most poor people are the ones who are hit the hardest. And you guys are arguing that oftentimes it's the poorest people who aren't driving, who are the most dependent upon buses and other forms of mass transit. So therefore, they're paying a disproportionate amount for a service they'll use less than other people.
Yeah, absolutely true. I think sales taxes across the board is pretty well established that lower income people pay a greater proportion of their income than higher income people in sales taxes. And so, an amount that might seem trivial to someone who's better off could make a significant impact on someone who's sort of struggling to put food on the table. Yeah. And so making sure that if we're going to fund local transportation this way, that we fund it in an equitable way, and that it helps out the folks who are going to bear the burden most heavily.
Yeah. Do you guys have you done any work? I mean, you mentioned that there's not much money elsewhere for transit expenditures, but have you guys brainstormed any other ideas that you might be able to raise money either for road work or, just in general in the transportation sector?
Yeah.
What kind of creative thinking is getting done by your organization or anybody else?
Yeah, at the local level, unfortunately, there are somewhat limited options. Yeah. There are things like vehicle registration fees, and there may be some potential to address that. There are potentially parcel taxes, but none of those things raise as much money as a sales tax. And so, I think there are other things to explore, but unfortunately, the local options are at this point a little bit limited. Mm-hmm. So probably, the larger amounts of money will, just like with roads, end up having to come from the state or federal government. But having that local, reliable money that we can use without the strings attached, and we can use if state or federal money gets cut.
Yeah.
This is like one of the only kinds of ways that we can do that.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. Are you planning on attending the board meeting on Tuesday?
I absolutely am.
Are you going to get up and speak? What do you think you're going to say, or how do you think that'll go?
Yeah, well, once the agenda is published and we have the final...
it should be tomorrow, right?
It should be Friday or maybe early Saturday morning.
Okay.
Once that's published and we have the sort of final language that they're proposing,
Yeah.
We'll review that, and CRTP along with the other members of our coalition, and we'll sort of figure out where we stand and if there are changes that we'd like to see. And we don't want to oppose the tax.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Yeah.
We want to have good funding for transit as well as for safer roads and all the other things that we need.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just see what we need to do to get there, and hopefully we'll be able to support it. But if not, we are ready to oppose it.
Yeah, it's interesting that threshold figure is, sort of the big question. If depending on what amount they say that we're willing to spend on mass transit, if any, then that's where the real question begins among yourselves, I guess, right? To see if that's sufficient.
And it's a matter of how is transit written in there, and is it a list of 15 other things where it's not going to get much attention, or is it roads and transit only? And also, what kind of accountability mechanism do they set up, as we were discussing earlier? And can we sort of have some assurance that no matter who's sitting in the Board of Supervisors seats in the future, that
Absolutely.
we'll have some of it spent the way it's being promised.
Yeah, and the thing is, with these kinds of tax initiatives, they're usually sunsetted out several years later, and things can change over time.
Yeah.
So getting that guarantee that what they say will happens is vitally important, of course.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to encourage people, the Board of Supervisors meetings are Tuesdays at 9 o'clock in the morning at the Humboldt County Courthouse. Like you mentioned, the agenda should come out either tomorrow or today, Friday, or it should be available tomorrow morning, so check that out at their county website. Thank you, Colin, for coming in and for all your work, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for coming in and watching our show again tonight. This program has been made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you, so thank you. And before we go, remember to check out our podcast, Neon Galactic. It's about everything I find interesting, including UFOs, UAPs, and the nature of consciousness. You can visit youtube.com/@neongalactic, or, stay tuned, stay informed.